Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is our series on the Gospel of Mark, and we're continuing in Mark chapter 3. So if you want to turn over to Mark chapter 3, you can read along with me. Up to this point, we've seen that this first part of Mark, all the way through most of chapter 8, is just giving details about Jesus being the Son of God. Then in chapter 8, we'll make a turn where Jesus will focus on the type of Messiah he's going to be. So here in Mark 8, we begin with the story of Jesus and the man with the withered hand. Jesus entered again into the synagogue. A man was there with a withered hand. Some of the people watched Jesus closely to see if he would heal the man on the Sabbath because they wanted to bring charges against him. So already in Mark chapter 3, we're running into conflict between Jesus and the religious leaders. And this will be a consistent theme throughout the Gospel of Mark. In fact, in this part of Mark, we see Jesus in conflict with the religious leaders, and Jesus also in conflict with his family. Later, there'll be Jesus in conflict with his hometown. And even a little later, Jesus in conflict with his own disciples. And so that's a big part of the Gospel of Mark, and sort of what drives the story and the narrative in Mark. Who's going to accept Jesus and who's going to reject him? Which is the ultimate question of the gospel and why the gospel was written. Are we going to accept or reject Jesus? This now in verse 3, Jesus said to the man with the withered hand, "Come away from the rest of the people." Jesus asked those in the crowd, "Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil, to save a life or to kill?" They remained silent. Jesus looked around at them with anger, grieved at the hardness of their hearts. He said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. Jesus asked this question about the Sabbath, and it was a good question, and it was a biblical question, because even in the law, it was permitted to do good on the Sabbath. You might remember where Jesus talks about, if your donkey falls in a ditch, don't you pull it out. That was part of Sabbath law. But here, the people, they just remain silent just to see what Jesus is going to do. And so he gets angry with them. And I just want to make the point that Jesus got angry here. He got angry in the cleansing of the temple in John 2. And it's okay to get angry because anger is an emotion. And in fact, the Old Testament talks about God being angry. And so to try to say, well, you can never be angry, you can never get angry. Well, it's just, first off, it's if you have emotion, then it's impossible. Secondly, it's not biblical. Thirdly, it's not healthy. We do get angry. It's what you do with that anger that matters. And if you can express it to somebody else, if you can pray your way through it, if you can even turn it into a righteous zeal and do a good action, then great. And that's what Jesus does here. And so the man stretches out his hand, and it's immediately restored, showing the power of Jesus again in another miracle story. Immediately the Pharisees left, and they held counsel with the supporters of King Herod concerning how they might destroy Jesus. So here we are early in the gospel, chapter 3, and there's already talk about how to get rid of Jesus. And the word there is not just get rid of him in secret, it's destroy him. How do we take his name out of the history books is the idea. And notice that the Pharisees are teaming up with the Herodians. Historically, they were on opposite sides of the spectrum. Herodians were in favor of King Herod. The Pharisees were not in favor of King Herod or of Rome. But they joined forces now to attempt to wipe out Jesus, wipe him out of the history books. Okay, let's continue on in chapter 3, verses 7 through 12. This is going to go back and pick up a story that was left off in 145 before the series of conflicts with Jesus and the religious leaders. Okay, so we'll pick that up in verse 7. Jesus withdrew to the lake with his apprentices. A large crowd followed from Galilee, Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, and the region beyond the Jordan, Tyre and Sidon, that's in the north. So basically, north, south, east, and west, people are following Jesus. They've heard of him. They're around Galilee now, and people from everywhere are starting to come and to see about this person, Jesus. It says, having heard all that he had done, a great crowd approached him. He told his disciples to get a boat ready for him so that the crowd would not press in on him. He healed many, and those who were suffering pressed in on him so that they might touch him. When those with unclean spirits, I brought that up many times before, saw him, they fell at his feet and cried out, saying, you are what? The Son of God. Major theme in Mark. And the unclean spirits recognize it. The point is, why didn't the Pharisees and the Herodians above this recognize it? Will his disciples recognize it? And will we recognize it? So plain to these unclean spirits, why is it not so plain to everyone else? Jesus sternly warned them not to make him known. That messianic secret again. He's not prepared to let people know who he really is because he needs to explain to his disciples who he's going to be. I want you to notice one thing here. This whole section here is just about Jesus helping people, performing miracles, healing people. Sometimes, I've heard quite often actually that Jesus was all about preaching and all about teaching, and the miracles were almost as if they were not as important or off to the side. But this whole passage right here is just simply about the healing ministry of Jesus. Jesus came preaching, teaching, and healing. And that's what he does in this story right here. And honestly, a big part of the ministry of the Church of Jesus today still should be healing people, helping people get whole lives, and taking care of people. That's a huge part of what, like different parts of the ministry that deal with addiction and that sort of stuff. That's a healing ministry, and it's a good thing to have in our ministry. Okay, now Jesus calls the 12, or appoints the 12. We've seen him call Peter and Andrew and James and John and call Levi. Now he's going to appoint 12. Verse 13, Jesus went up on a mountain and he called the ones he desired to follow him, and they came to him. Notice that he calls them. What would happen in the first century is the rabbi would, people would choose the rabbi. They would go along and follow rabbis and then pick one. Here the rabbi calls his followers. He appointed 12, whom he also called apostles. That word means to be sent on a mission. So these 12 were related to Jesus in a special way for a special mission that Jesus was going to give them, that they might be with him and he might send them to preach as heralds of the king and to have authority to cast out demons. He appointed these 12, Simon, whom he gave the name Peter, James the son of Zebedee, and his brother John, whom he called sons of thunder, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. So that's pretty clear. It's just a narrative section. It's just telling us what's going on there. The next section is Jesus and Beelzebub, verses 20 through 30. Jesus entered a house. The crowd followed him to the point that he and his apprentices were not able to eat a meal. When his family heard about this, they went to take him by force, for they said, he has lost his mind. So now we have not just the Pharisees and the scribes and the Herodians questioning Jesus and being in conflict with Jesus. We also have his own family being in conflict with him, which is a major, that's a major idea. It's one thing to have the Pharisees and the scribes and the Herodians, but now his own family. And so what's his family going to do? Are they going to reject him, or are they going to receive him? Well, we go on and we read, the experts of religious law who came down from Jerusalem said, he is possessed by Beelzebub and he cast out demons by the rulers of demons. So now the scribes get involved in this. Calling to them, Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, how is Satan able to cast out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom will not survive. If a house is divided against itself, that house will not stand. If Satan rises up and is divided against himself, he will not be able to stand. He will be finished. No one is able to enter a strong man's house and thoroughly plunder his property. However, a stronger man might enter and first bind the strong man, then the stronger man can plunder the house. So he tells them this parable when the scribes say, well, he's casting out demons by Beelzebub, by Satan. That means the Lord of the Flies, Beelzebub. And Jesus says, well, why would Satan cast out his own demons? That's the question. But then he tells them this parable, can a house be divided against itself? And he says, if you're going to go into a house and plunder the house, someone stronger than who is there is going to have to tie up the person, and then they can plunder the house. Jesus is implying there that he is stronger than Satan, that he cast out demons not through Satan's power, but his own power, which is stronger than Satan's power, stronger than the demonic power. And in that day and time, there was a real belief in demonic power. There was a real belief in the spiritual warfare that honestly we are a part of today, but we don't talk about it as much as they did in the first century. And we can take confidence in the fact that we're on the side of the victor. We're the side of the stronger army, the stronger person, Jesus. And that's exactly what he's saying there. Truly, I tell you, every sin will be forgiven of humankind, and every blasphemy by which they blaspheme, except blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. This sin will not be forgiven for eternity. The person is guilty of an eternal sin, because they said he has an unclean spirit. So the question arises, what is blasphemy of the Holy Spirit? Put simply, what I think blasphemy of the Holy Spirit is, it's whenever you equate the power of Satan with Jesus, or equate the power of Satan with the Holy Spirit. Instead of seeing the Holy Spirit's work, like the scribes, you say, oh, that's the devil's work. Or instead of seeing the work of Jesus, you say, oh, that's Satan's work. That's the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. It won't be forgiven because to get to that point, you've already hardened your heart to the point that you're not going to receive Jesus, and you're not going to see who the Holy Spirit really is. Your eyes are blind to the spiritual truth. Okay, let's move on now, and we're going to look at the mother and brothers of Jesus in 31-35. Continue that first sentence we just read. Jesus' mothers and brothers arrived and stood outside and sent word to him to meet with them. A crowd was sitting around Jesus, and they said to him, look, your mother and brothers are outside waiting for you, the same ones that said he's lost his mind. Jesus answered them, who is my mother and my brothers? Looking around to those sitting in the circle, he said, look, here are my mother and brothers. Whoever does the will of God, those people are my brothers and sisters and mother. And this is another major theme that you see in the Gospel of Mark. Those who are on the outside with Jesus are actually on the inside. And those who should be on the inside and understand and accept Jesus are often on the outside. That's even true of his own family. You would think that his mother, Mary, who actually saw the angel, that she would understand Jesus is not out of his mind here. His brothers, well, they could be envious, they could be jealous, but these are insiders. These are people who should know who Jesus is, but they're on the outside looking in. Whereas those who are inside, understanding Jesus, are in this circle, are just the multitude of people that are following him. And then the question comes up, which are you going to be? Are you going to be on the inside with Jesus in his circle, or are you going to be on the outside trying to look in? And it's a question that Mark raises, and it's a really, really important question. And so you see, what's going on here is this continual discussion about who Jesus really is. Him being the Son of God through his miracles, through his teaching. In this next section, chapter 4, through parables. We're going to look at 4 parables and a storm in this next section. So primarily it's come up in 2 ways in these first 3 chapters. Through the miracle stories, Jesus proves he is the Son of God. And secondly, through how Jesus handles conflict. Conflict with the Pharisees, with the scribes, with Herodians, and yes, even with his own family. Jesus proves he is the Son of God. And if his family's going to reject him, which at this point, that's what's happening. Later on, that's going to change. But at this point, that's what's happening. If the religious leaders, like the Pharisees and the scribes, are going to reject him, if the Roman government, like the Herodians, is going to reject him, then what are you going to do? What are we going to do? Are we going to see that he is the Son of God, or will we reject him? The demons themselves, the unclean spirits themselves, state plainly he is the Son of God. Demonic forces see Jesus as he is. They understand his power. Are we going to see his power? And if so, how's that going to change our lives? Big part of what Mark chapter 1 through 8 is really all about. And in the next video, we'll talk about some parables of Jesus and his teaching ministry, which also demonstrates that he is the Son of God. Thank you.